Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for High Velocity Radio.
Lee Cantor here, another episode of High Velocity Radio, and this is going to be a good one. Today on the show, we have Kyle McDowell, author of the best-selling book, Begin with We. Welcome.
Hey, Lee. Really great to be here. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to learn about you and your book, but before we get into that, can you share a little bit about your backstory?
Yeah, absolutely. I spent nearly 30 years in corporate America, leading at the end of my journey, leading tens of thousands of employees at household names here in the States. And I was really privileged to have a really successful run. And I usually use air quotes when I say successful, but by most standards, I had the fancy titles, the cool corner offices, great compensation, and a pretty big sphere of influence. But what I found the last decade or so of my career was, with each new kind of step of growth and taking on bigger and bigger operations, I found myself becoming more and more apathetic to the whole engine. Like so many of us, I started my career with a lot of passion. I wanted to make an impact. I wanted to find fulfillment. I wanted to do big things, and I was able to do fulfill a lot of those expectations and hopes. But I also never really took the time to ask at what cost. So I found myself just completely disconnected from the very environments that I was responsible for creating, which is a really tough thing to swallow. So I stepped away from it all 2019 and felt like I had an opportunity to share a message that I had seen really, really impact several organizations, and through these concepts that I created called the 10 We's. They're principles that I use to create a sense of belonging and inclusion and really transform cultures inside of big organizations. When I left, I was at a crossroad. Do I want to put this book together and get it out to the public, or do I want to go back into the corporate world and lead another organization? And I just felt like my purpose was bigger. So I wrote the book and became a USA Today and Wall Street Journal bestseller. And now I just spend my time working with leaders and companies alike to help them get out of their own way, to help reconnect them with their passion and try to find fulfillment. And man, maybe in some ways get them to lose the Sunday scaries and not necessarily hate work, but try to find a way to thrive inside of it. Because as you know, Will, we spend a good portion of our life doing what this thing is called work, like 100,000 hours, as a matter of fact. So it's my mission to rid the world of that toxic stuff that I was a part of, and help people find real fulfillment, genuine fulfillment.
Now, just before we get too far into things again, I want to share a little of my background. I've always been an entrepreneur, always had small businesses. My wife, on the other hand, had a corporate career, not exactly like yours, but involved in super large enterprise organization, and kind of worked her way through. So I've had a chance to get a glimpse of what that corporate kind of life and mentality is. And then I've experienced firsthand this kind of small business entrepreneur grind. Obviously, there's a lot more people like me on the planet that are doing a small business kind of grind rather than working in a large enterprise level organization. Can you talk about kind of how you view that lens of your career has primarily been through these large corporate enterprises versus kind of the entrepreneur that's kind of grinding on Main Street, not on Wall Street?
Yeah, man, what a really, really important question. Because after spending those 28, nearly 30 years in the big settings, for some context, my last role, I led a team of 15,000, had a P&L in the multi-billion-dollar range. Switching that kind of paradigm from big organizations to going the entrepreneurial grinding route, it could not be more eye-opening. It could not have been more of a shock to the system. Now, the common element between the two scenarios is just people, is trying to connect with people and help people. And I genuinely believe, at least for me, I can speak for myself, right? During my corporate America run, most of that time was focused on me and not on those around me. When I discovered the principles and started to cascade them and evangelize them as who I am and how I wanted to lead, my whole paradigm shifted, and my emphasis and focus was on people and the people around me and developing them. And I've managed to keep that through the entrepreneurial journey. The grind is different. The way I spend my days is wildly different than it was in the corporate days. But at the end of everything, it's really about the people and those that I work with and try to help.
Now, in your book, I believe the first we is do the right thing, and do the right thing always. That's kind of a non-negotiable. Now, in the corporate world, do the right thing, is that in the context of do the right thing for me and my career to get to the next rung of the ladder, or do the right thing for humanity, or do the right thing for my shareholders, or do the right thing, for my employees? Question. I mean, Who are we doing the right thing for, and who's our true north?
Yeah. So I walk the reader through kind of a decision tree in the book that helps. And before you react, just hear me out, because I love the way you framed that. Am I helping myself and doing the right thing for me and getting to the next rung? But here's that filter. If I'm struggling with a decision or need to make or choose a path for the team, by the way, or for my organization more broadly, I like to think of it through three filters. The first is, and this is where I ask you to hear me out. The first is, am I doing the right thing for the company? Because this just in, if there's no company, there's no client. And that's the second cohort. It's 3 C's, by the way: the company, the client. And if there's no client, there's no crew, there's no team. So my goal has always been to make a decision or choose a path that checks all 3 of those boxes. I'll live with 2, and if I have to, I'll sacrifice and just live with 1. But you notice what's missing: me. There is no scenario where I should prioritize myself and my own well-being as a leader when I'm struggling with doing the right thing. Now, we can disagree with the right thing is, we can argue about it, we can go on, because it is very subjective depending on the scenario and the environment. But at no point should I prioritize my well-being in that decision. Hard pill for some to swallow, but it really does show in how we approach our leadership game.
Now, in your model, you don't include the C being the community, like where you're located, the people around you that aren't part of the company, but are part of the ecosystem that the company is part of.
Yeah, fair point. But I do believe if I focus on those 3 cohorts, the company, the client, and the crew, by definition, if I'm with an organization that cares about the people, the crew, there will be some payoff for the community. We're going to be providing jobs. We're going to be providing opportunities. And of course, we want to be in a situation where we're giving back to the communities in which we operate. So I think it's inherent in those 3 C's.
Now, when you're talking to people about this concept and having them not focus on themselves, is this something that people are like, hey, Kyle, where have you been all my life? This is a breakthrough. This is eye-opening. Tell me more. How do I get more of this? Or is it something that, like, dude, you've gone through this? Yeah, it's easy for you to say, don't worry about you. You're set. Yeah.
Really, another great question, Lee. And I would say it's split. The principles, I am the first to admit, the 10 We's, the principles that are outlined in the book and where I spend almost every waking moment trying to evangelize, they are incredibly simple. You just touched on one. We do the right thing. No one's gonna disagree that, hey, I want to be part of a team that does the right thing. It's very, very simple. But simple is not easy. So the split is those that say, oh yeah, and I even say this on stage, and hopefully you can bleep this out. It's like, no shit, Kyle. This is so elementary and fundamental, but it's not easy. It's not easy to live it every single day. It's not easy to walk it every single day, because you're faced with challenges that our natural reaction is to go into self-preservation mode and do things that benefit ourselves. The other side of the coin, the other cohort that I hear from is like, this makes so much sense. I've never had anybody put it in writing and say, this is who we are, and be as discreet and succinct about how these rules, and I call them the rules that govern our behavior, how we treat each other behind the scenes. So it really falls into those 2 camps, and I'm prepared to work with either, candidly.
Now, another one of your we's is the we measure ourselves by outcomes, not activity. How how can you measure yourself on outcomes when so much of outcomes are really outside of your control? I mean, you can measure yourself on doing the work, the process, doing all of the things that could possibly lead to an outcome, but the outcome, a lot of times, there's nothing you could do. It just, sometimes the fate is not working for you today, or all of a sudden there's a pandemic there when there wasn't a pandemic. So all your numbers are going to not work out because something dramatic happened that was outside your control.
Well, I think once in a century scenarios notwithstanding, like a pandemic, which presented a number of challenges that no one had ever faced before, that aside, what we're talking about here when we say outcomes over activities starts even before we have, whether we judge if we have achieved an outcome. And that starts with expectations. So every person, theoretically, and I'm sure there are exceptions, but at least in my experience, every person on the team has a series, at least one, of outcomes for which they have been assigned or to which they've been assigned, right? So it's on their annual appraisal, it's on their evaluation, like whatever those metrics are, those are the outcomes we're talking about. And if there are scenarios or hurdles that step in the way of us delivering those outcomes, that's fine, but we have to talk about it. What we're trying to avoid is mindless activity, meeting after meeting, that are not connected to the outcomes that we've been assigned to deliver. So if I know if my leader and I have aligned on what the expectations for me are throughout the course of the next quarter, the next year, whatever, and we have agreed, even gone as far to like shake hands, that this is the list of things that Kyle must achieve over this defined period of time, then that's what I got to chase. And I really need to eradicate all activity that is not connected to those. I say very plainly, if you can't draw a straight line from something in which you're engaged, whether it be a series of meetings or whether it be, you pick whatever the activity is. If you cannot draw a straight line from that to an activity or an outcome rather that you have been assigned or that you're chasing, it should be scrutinized. And that's the point. Sure, things will get in the way and you'll have unexpected scenarios. But the point of a we-oriented culture is when those things arise, we talk about them openly and we share, okay, boss, this is something that might stand in the way of me delivering that outcome. And then we rally to come up with a different outcome. But it's really about weeding out the mindless and unnecessary activity.
And it's the honest and transparent communication.
Amen. Amen.
Because a lot of, at least in my opinion, a lot of corporate issues are because somebody doesn't want to tell somebody bad news. So they're true. They're
true.
They're maybe,
and that's why one of the we's is what it is. We number 5 is we own our mistakes. I want my teams to understand if they stumble or make an error or even a giant blunder. I tell a story in the book about a guy on my team who made a $10 million mistake. We're still great friends many years later. But owning our mistakes is essential for recognizing improvement opportunities for us to avoid repeats of those same mistakes and ultimately satisfy those we serve externally, our clients. But this fear mentality and fear of retribution for making a mistake, it's all over the news lately with Boeing and the CEO testifying at Congress, is a scenario that I just can't be a part of, and I don't want my teams to live that way.
Yeah, in our organization, we have a rule, bad news fast.
Amen. Yeah.
We just want to let this come out now so we can proactively deal with it rather than be surprised by it, next quarter.
Yep. And that's why I also created we number 6 is we pick each other up. So if I'm brave enough to raise my hand and say, hey, boss, I blew it, or, there's something that I'm really struggling with, everyone around that person, peers, leader, even members of that team, if they lead another team, they need to say, okay, Kyle, it's okay. I got you. My hand is extended. What can I do to help? And when we have that environment, owning up to mistakes, it becomes so much more natural.
Now, how do you role model kind of that combination of being vulnerable and authentic, but also confident and competent, right? So your team has to believe that you know where you're going, but that you also have to kind of sometimes tell them that this is a best guess here. There's no guarantees.
I don't know that it's a balance as much as just you use a couple of words that I think are superpowers for leaders. Vulnerability was one that stuck out. That is absolutely something that I think more leaders must get comfortable with. There seems to be this positioning that so many leaders, more appropriately bosses, take, that they must have all the answers. And I believe, the foundation of all leadership is trust. For by definition, for me to be a leader, I've got to have followers, and no one's going to follow me if they don't trust me. And I think trust is the outcome of authenticity and relatability. So authenticity plus relatability, you're going to land on trust. So when my team knows, and I practice this in my business today, in a couple of different businesses, my team is well aware when I'm uncertain. They are well aware when I don't have the answers because I tell them. And the goal is for us to align on the approach to something. And if we fail, we're going to fail together. And if we win, we're going to win together. But we will not have dissenting opinions once we've made that decision. So I just believe in being incredibly open with my concerns, my fears, because they have the same. And if I'm not, that relatability component is lost, and therefore trust is lost.
Now, what's your kind of temperature on this upcoming cohort of young leaders? Are you bullish or bearish?
I tell you, man, I think I'm bullish. By the way, I'm bullish. And there's a story that I'll tell, a really brief story that highlights this for me. I gave a keynote in South Florida not long ago, and I was checking into the hotel, and I live in Tampa, so I actually drove down. I had a box of books in my trunk, and I was checking into this hotel. The trunk was open to grab my luggage out of the back, and the valet walks up, and the valet couldn't have been more than 18 years old. And he tattoos on his face. Like he was a rough looking fella. Like he would not be the kind of guy that would proceed to do what he did. He looks inside my trunk and he sees these boxes. He said, "Are you an author?" And I said, "Yeah, man, I'm an author." He said, you write books?" I go, "Yeah, well, I wrote a book." He said, "No kidding." He said, "Where can I buy your book?" And I said, well, first of all, I said, "What's the book about?" I said, "Leadership, trying to thrive inside of your work life and not just, bear it." And he says, "Well, where can I buy the book?" I said, "Well, I'll give you a book. I have a bunch right here. Let me give you one." I said, "But I have one condition." I said, you have to promise me you're going to read the book, and then promise me you're going to get back to me on what you thought about it." And he said, "Of course I will." I said, "You give me your word?" He said, "Yeah, of course." So I actually took a picture of me signing the book, and he signed it as well as his commitment to get back to me. And this, again, probably 18, 19 years old. Wouldn't you know, a couple of weeks, tops, maybe a week and a half went by. I get an email from him telling me he started the book. He's loving the content. My point of sharing the story is, if we judge an entire generation or profile of people and that, their approach to work, all the descriptors you hear in the media today, if we approach an entire generation or profile with that negative mindset, we're going to get exactly what we expect. We're going to get garbage feedback. We're going to get garbage results. I'm not naive. The workforce is absolutely changing. The profile, the expectations, the work ethic, absolutely changing. But at everyone's core, there's a degree of humanity that I think can be reached. It just has to be reached in a different way. That's where I think we're at this inflection point where we've got baby boomers aging out of the workforce. You got Gen X that is also kind of getting up there. And as they approach millennials, it's a different approach. For decades, if not centuries, all employees had to conform to the way the organization operated. That's no more. There are too many opportunities. There are too many, with work at home being what it is, with the gig economy, there are chances for people to do so many different things, far more than they ever could in the past. So now I think it's important for the leader in the organization to find ways to reach the employee to get the most and best out of them.
So who is the ideal reader of this book? Is it just people in corporate America, or is it going to be anybody? Yeah,
it's really, and I mean this with sincerity. It's not a play to sell books, because I didn't write the book to make a bunch of money, and good thing. Although, I have to share, we've just passed 15,000 units sold, which is a mind-bending number to me. But it is for anyone who is tired of the old leadership playbook, someone that wants to lead in a way that they've never been led, or be on a team and participate as a team member in ways they've never been asked or allowed to participate in the past. The other thing that has been so heartwarming to me, and a completely unexpected byproduct, and I hear it a lot actually lately, is the impact that the principles can have on one's personal life. So these are rules for life. They're principles, which is, let's just level set. A principle is a fundamental belief. It is a system of beliefs, a foundation for a system of beliefs. And if we align around these 10 W's or any one of these principles, we're going to be better off in the workplace and out. And I am really, really optimistic that there's a place for these principles much broader than the corporate world.
Now, if somebody wants to take advantage of principle number 4, we take action, and buy the book, where can they go? Do you have a website, or is it just Amazon? Where should they go? I like
what you did there, Lee. It's available essentially wherever books are sold. Amazon seems to be the easiest and quickest for most people, but it's also on Audible. There's an ebook as well. Barnes and Noble, Target, basically anywhere books are sold.
And then if somebody wants to connect with you, do you have a website or LinkedIn? What's the best way to kind of follow you?
Yeah, you bet. So really simple. KyleMcDowellInc.com is the website. And my social for all platforms essentially is Kyle McDowell Inc. as well. So LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere. Always Kyle McDowell Inc.
Well, Kyle, thank you so much for sharing your story today. You're doing such important work, and we appreciate you.
Well, Lee, you are as well, man. And thank you for the platform to share the message. I'm very grateful.
All right, this is Lee Cantor. We'll see you all next time on High Velocity Radio.